Starting to get nasty.
We've got to get out of here.
January 2003. A captain and his ship are in trouble on the Atlantic Ocean. The crew aboard the Finnish cargo ship Camilla is struggling to get the 7,000 horsepower engine up and running. It's been breaking down all through the night.
When the engine stopped working, I woke up instantly with the notion that something was wrong.
The massive 12-cylinder engine has a badly damaged oil filter, so there's no oil to lubricate the engine's crankshaft. The crankshaft grinds against the bearings that connect it to the rotating pistons, and that constant friction has caused the engine to seize up and die. Captain Markku Rakola knows that with no engine power, he and his 15 crew members are trapped. His 28-year-old third officer, Maiju Sari, loves the adventure of working on the high seas. But this is a new and frightening experience.
Getting a coffee, do you want one?
When we realized that the engine couldn't be fixed, I remember thinking, this is an impossible situation. I thought to myself, now something is going to happen and there's nothing I can do about it.
Nyt vaan yksinkertaisesti jotain tapahtuu, että nyt ei voi mitään.
I felt numb at that moment.
The Camilla is stranded more than 450 kilometers from the nearest port, St. John's. The Grand Banks off the east coast of Canada is the last place anyone wants engine failure. The water here is shallow, and a shallow seabed creates massive waves. The area is also known for its unpredictable weather. More than 7,000 ships have sunk in these waters over the centuries. And now, even worse news rolls in.
And tell him to double check with ESCO. Maiju?
Just a sec. Doesn't look good. Coming straight for us.
We've run out of time.
A cyclone is approaching from the southwest. Winds will hit 150 kilometers an hour, and waves will reach 24 meters, enough to sink the stricken Camilla. The storm is still some hours away, but Captain Rakola knows that there's no help nearby. Anyone who tries to rescue his crew will have to outrace the storm. Rakola is forced to consider all options for escape. The nearest tugboat is 20 hours away, but it's his best hope.
You're going to have to try for a tug.
Tugboat? Out this far in this? Do you really think that...
Of course.
Even though I knew that our situation was uncertain, I could not show it, or else everyone would start worrying, and that would lead to panic.
Because the Camilla is unable to move forwards, it has no resistance against the power of the storm. When the cyclone's waves hit this shallow floor, their energy gets compressed, creating huge breaking waves which can shatter windows, shift cargo, and potentially even turn a ship upside down.
The waves come in like this and beat and shake you. And there is nothing you can do about it.
It'll be right here on top of us. One thing's for sure. We've got to get out of here. I'll call the owners.
North 46, 55, 1. West 46, 49, 8.
This is Mayusari's first job as an officer. During her 6-year sailing career, she's never had to fear for her life before.
Kun laskettiin, että se on osuma, että me osutaan kyllä.
When we realized that the storm would hit us if we didn't get out of its way,
Ehkä siinä sitten
I had to switch into a certain mental mode in order to cope with the situation.
Nyt sitten jotain.
Because even if something was going to happen to us, I couldn't start crying there or panicking.
Eikä muutenkaan panikoimaan, koska
Starting to get nasty. Waves 6, maybe 7 meters.
If a tugboat's going to save them, it will have to outrace the storm.
Hey, the engine won't be fixed for 24 hours, so we're looking for a tug.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good, thanks.
What'd they say?
They're going to try to send us a tug.
Great.
Yeah.
So how's it looking out there? It's a big low pressure system moving in from the east. It's going to be poor visibility, high winds. Waves are going to be very big.
More than 600 kilometers from the stranded Camilla is home base for 103 Search and Rescue Squadron. Veteran helicopter pilot Major Gilbert Thibault arrives on duty.
We are asked to go in situations that are extremes, and we have to make decisions also that may mean somebody's gonna live or somebody's gonna die.
In the coming hours, Thibault will face many life and death decisions as he and his team put their lives on the line to save the 16 sailors. The Camilla has now been stranded for 2 hours, and the storm is moving closer.
Okay, yeah, will do. Right, thanks.
There are no tugboats close enough to get to the storm hits. Captain Rakula has to find another way to save the lives of his crew.
We could not afford to take the risk of staying there in a storm of this magnitude, and then in the morning to have to check whether we were afloat or had drowned.
He now faces the moment every captain dreads.
When I started to make a decision about abandoning the ship, it was certainly the toughest decision of my life and of my entire sailing career.
Rescue Center Halifax to Camilla.
Go ahead, Halifax.
Please state your present coordinates.
46, 56, 8, north. 46, 47, 1, west.
You got that?
Siinä oli yksi hetki, kun
There was a moment when I was quite terrified. It happened when the Coast Guard asked how many people our life rafts can take.
Kuinka monta ihmistä teillä mahtuu yhteen pelastuslauttaan?
Then I thought if we have to go on those rafts in that weather, that will be really serious.
Tohon säähän menemään niissä lautoissa, niin sitten...
But somehow I managed to wipe these thoughts from my mind and calm myself down.
Pyyhki vaan pois päältä ja yritti vaan sitten jollain tavalla rauhoittua.
The ship is now rocking so uncontrollably that it's simply not possible to attempt escape in the lifeboats.
We cannot stay here, but lifeboats are not an option.
What we're going to do is send a helicopter to you.
There's 16 of us!
Your situation has been designated an M1 emergency.
An M1 emergency is a top priority. The Camilla's crew is in danger of injury or death.
Now we see.
The hopes of rescue for Captain Rakula, Third Officer Sari, and the rest of the crew now hinge on a helicopter reaching them before the storm hits. But the nearest helicopter is in Gander, 618 kilometers away. St. John's is the closest point of land. The entire journey will be more than 1,000 kilometers. On top of that, the helicopter will have to hover for more than an hour to hoist the 16 sailors to safety. And that will be impossible without refueling.
Urgent. Cormorant standby crew report to operations immediately. Cormorant standby crew report to operations immediately.
Okay, guys. We have got a cargo vessel out of Finland. They've lost their engine. She's almost 450 kilometers offshore from St. John's. Pretty bad storm.
This mission will push men and machine to the limit. Major Thibault's co-pilot is Captain Andrew Mercer. Mercer spent years flying tactical helicopters around the world. But on this six-man team, he's the new kid on the block.
Obviously, we can't get there and back on a full tank.
Hibernia. It's probably going to be our best bet.
Major Thibault is counting on a fuel stop at the Hibernia oil drilling platform. Located 150 kilometers from the Camilla, this will allow the helicopter to fly the 1,000-kilometer round trip.
As far as time on scene, I know you guys would like as much as possible.
Major Thibault has calculated exactly how much time they can spend on the rescue itself and still have enough fuel to get back to home base.
Absolutely necessary goes. By my calculation, I can give you 75 minutes.
That's less than 5 minutes to hoist each of the 16 sailors.
Take off in 30 minutes.
With each passing minute, weather conditions deteriorate as the storm moves closer to the stricken vessel. Before abandoning ship, the crew closes all doors and conduits in order to make the Camilla as watertight as possible. Third Officer Mayu Sari notifies everyone of the decision to abandon ship.
Wake up! Get your survival suits ready! We're abandoning ship. Hey, everybody, wake up! Let's go! Let's go!
Back at the base, Major Thibault is relying on an impressive piece of machinery to save the lives of the sailors, the newly acquired CH-149 Cormorant. He strips any excess equipment from the helicopter to make room for the 16 passengers. He needs to eliminate all unnecessary weight. The lighter the load, the more fuel they can carry. And Thibault knows that every drop will count on this mission.
An helicopter is not like a car. You cannot run out of fuel and park it on the side of the road. I mean, running out of fuel is not an option.
little to do but wait, Captain Rakula considers the consequences of his decision.
Making a decision is sometimes a little difficult, but if you make right decisions, then anyone who knows about sailing will know that this guy is not dumb. He has been able to make the right decision at a critical moment. But if you make wrong decisions, after that your career may be gone as well.
Sergeant Rob Vidito will be responsible for operating the rescue hoist. Before takeoff, he double-checks to make sure that this lifeline is in perfect working order.
Check. Right hand out is approved. Surface winds are 310, 15 gusting 20 knots. Clear takeoff from the south pad.
The cyclone is closing in on the Camilla. For the rescuers, the race is on to get there first.
I would lie to you if the adrenaline's not pumping. The adrenaline is definitely pumping, and your mind is rushing and going through all these different scenarios. How can I make it better? Where can I go for fuel? Do I need medical?
For Major Thibault, the Cormorant is the ultimate flying machine. Its 3 powerful turbine engines produce an incredible 6,400 horsepower.
I often compare the Cormoran to an F1 race car, a machine with that much technology in it, and it's also a machine that you push to its limit fairly often in the job we do.
Tunteista, mitä tuli sitten.
One of the worst feelings was the fact that my parents and sister knew about my situation, but I couldn't contact them to tell them how it's going so far. It was really bad to think about how they must have felt when they didn't really know anything. Well, other than the fact that the ship was in distress, at sea, in a storm.
Inhottavan tuntusta. Aloin sitten yritin lukea jotain
I started reading a book to get my mind away from it, so that I would not panic. I sat around, took deep breaths, and calmed myself down. Not to do anything stupid like get nervous or overreact.
Hengittelin rauhallisesti ja rauhoittelin itseäni, että nyt ei saa tehdä mitään typerää. Ei saa hermostua eikä ylireagoida.
It did help me. It was like a meditation.
Ikään kuin meditaation omainen.
The pilots' plan to refuel at the Hibernia oil rig is shattered. They're informed that Hibernia can't supply them with fuel.
Well, that's too bad. For us. Okay, over. Go figure, huh? Hibernia out of fuel.
We got information saying that the Hibernia had run out of fuel, and being the biggest oil producer out there, it was kind of just ironic that they didn't have the fuel for us.
Major Thibault is forced to divert to another oil rig to refuel.
We'll make our way over to the Henry Goodrich.
The Cormorant heads for the Henry Goodrich drilling platform, an additional 35 kilometers away from the Camilla. This diversion will add 10 minutes to the journey, and that means less time for the rescue itself. And now there's no hope of beating the storm. It's closing in at a rate of 85 kilometers an hour. The Henry Goodrich is a floating rig, not anchored to the seabed, so landing in high winds is extremely dangerous. Thibault won't be able to control the landing from his side of the helicopter.
Never landed on a floating rig before, huh? It's different.
So to keep the helicopter into wind and to keep visual with the platform, I had to let Andrew fly. I didn't have the references on my side.
Co-pilot Mercer has never landed on a floating platform before. It's a rare and difficult operation that requires enormous skill and nerves of steel, a critical moment to capture on video. One of the search and rescue technicians starts the camera rolling as Mercer closes in on the rig.
All yours, Andrew. I'll let them know we're coming in. Rescue 911 to Goodrich. Seeking permission to land for refueling, over.
The Cormorant has landed, but the helicopter's in danger of being blown off the platform. In order to prevent this, Mercer has to reverse the angle of the rotor blade, a technique known as negative pitch. This creates a downward force and pushes the helicopter onto the landing pad.
We actually sucked ourselves onto the oil rig. It's a really neat thing that we can do. I don't think very many actually helicopters can do that.
Meanwhile, on the Camilla, Captain Rakula prepares to abandon ship.
Yes, one can't help but wonder what my wife was thinking and whether we would ever see each other again in this world. When this thought came, I just had to push it to the back of my mind because I had to look after things at hand and then think about it again when the right time came.
Appreciate the top up. Glad to be of help, Major. Best of luck out there. Thanks. Don't need it.
After the stop on the oil platform, the Cormorant has just enough fuel to get to the Camilla, hover for 75 minutes to hoist the stranded crew to safety, and fly the 477 kilometers to the nearest land at St. John's. But just before takeoff, the unthinkable happens.
Okay, we're set. Com failure. We've got the com failure. Switching over to main system. Andrew, can you read me? Rob, can you hear me?
The Cormorant's complex fiber optic communication system stops working.
Rob, can you hear me?
I'm not getting you.
Okay, we're gonna do this by the book. We're gonna run a full system check.
While Thibault and Mercer can talk to each other, they can't communicate with flight engineer Rob Vidito in the back, and they have to be able to talk to him to execute the hoisting operation.
Okay, let's start with comm breaker 3, AC bus. Can you read me now, Rob? Comm breaker 2 on DC bus. Comm breaker 3 on DC bus.
The Major has a gut-wrenching decision to make. Press on or abort the mission altogether.
This is not good. Comm breaker 3, AC bus. Can you hear me now, Rob? Okay. Let's run everything twice. Comm breaker 3, DC bus.
The first thing that came in our head was that we won't be able to do this. You know, if we cannot communicate, there's no way we're going to be able to recover these people. So the first thing I think for all the crew members was, you know, we're stuck. We're going to have to go back.
There's only an hour and 40 minutes until sunset. Barely enough time to get to the Camilla and perform the 75-minute hoisting operation. Thibault and Mercer systematically reset all the breakers on board.
Rob, anything? Can you hear me, Rob?
Gotcha, Major. Loud and clear.
Eventually, they succeed.
We're back. Let's get moving here.
But the delay has cost another precious 15 minutes.
When I left my cabin for the last time, I had those things we were allowed to take with us, a few papers and a passport. I had packed my suitcase and I think I'd made my bed, just in case if the ship doesn't sink, somebody might come and see how I had lived there.
Ihminen on täällä asunut.
Captain Rakula orders everyone to put on their survival suits, waterproof dry suits made from neoprene, a synthetic rubber that contains millions of tiny air bubbles. The bubbles act as insulation and help with buoyancy. Dry suits provide warmth by protecting the clothing beneath from wind and water. Without these suits, the bitterly cold water of the Atlantic would kill them.
The last thing I wrote in the logbook on the command bridge was, of course, that most difficult fact that we are now going to abandon the ship.
Captain Rakula is now certain that the ship and its cargo are doomed. He relays the grim news to the ship's owners in Finland.
You dial, huh?
Yeah. Sure.
Niin me puettiin ne pelastuspuvut sitten niinku.
It was pretty difficult with that suit. He would hold the phone and I would push the buttons and he would talk. It was a strange feeling that this may be the last time they'd hear from us.
Me sitten mennään tonne alas, että mikä on tilanne ja...
Rakula here!
ETA 5 minutes on scene. Andrew, get the captain.
As the cormorant closes in on the Camilla, the search and rescue technicians make their final preparations.
Rescue 911 to Camilla.
Rescue 911 to Camilla.
This is Camilla, go ahead, 911.
Rescue helicopter approximately 5 minutes from you. All crew should gather on deck.
Tell them everyone's down there, we're just on our way.
We're on our way.
Hang in there, over.
Hey, we should go.
One last smoke. After this trip, I quit.
There's now just over an hour of daylight left. After flying for 3.5 hours, Thibault and Mercer catch their first sight of the stranded ship. From a distance, the situation doesn't look life-threatening. But as they move in, it becomes obvious that this operation will test Thibault's helicopter and crew to the limit.
Suddenly realize this huge 300-foot piece of metal is out of control. Very slowly, it's not spinning like a cork, it's moving very slowly, rolling, twisting, corking, sliding up and down the waves. And you suddenly realize this is not a stable platform. We have to rescue 16 people.
The storm is closing in. Scientists call this type of storm a meteorological bomb because it intensifies at such an explosive rate. Within a few short hours, its winds have more than doubled in force from 35 to 75 kilometers per hour, with its highest waves reaching over 25 meters, the height of a 7-story building.
My impression was that these guys were not going to make it through the night, and we had to take them off. Otherwise, that was the end for them.
Major Thibault has a huge challenge ahead. He has to work out how to get as close as possible in order to lower his men onto the moving target. But if he flies too low, the cormorant could run into the mast of the tossing ship, with deadly results.
We're going
When the helicopter did arrive, I was naturally very excited that now we are finally getting out of here.
He must be able to keep the helicopter at a constant equal distance from the ship. To achieve this, he'll need to make the helicopter rise and fall with the waves. 2 search and rescue technicians will be lowered onto the deck. 1 man will control the guide cable to reduce swaying during the hoisting. The other, Corporal Scott Elliston, will hook each sailor to the hoist and ride back up to the helicopter with them, one at a time.
Kind of thinking it's a big boat, it's moving, it's dead in the water, so it's going to be a different challenge. There's a potential for us to be, banged off part of the boat or hit or something. So you're kind of thinking of how you're going to do the business and, sometimes what might go wrong.
The success or failure of this mission will come down to split-second timing. And that's where flight engineer Rob Vidito plays a crucial role. He has the best view of the deck and will tell Thibault when the search and rescue technician has landed safely and is ready to begin the hoist. As Vidito counts down, the rhythm of his voice signals how close the hoist is to its target.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Steady. Ease down.
Rescue 911 to Camilla, over.
Go on, 911!
We need you to move your crew forward to the bow of the ship, over.
Hey! It's pretty icy over here!
Me hoipereltiin sitten ryhmässä sieltä.
We staggered to the front while the boat was going up and down, and the survival suits were quite slippery, so we had to walk carefully.
Mä ainakin menin ihan suoraan.
I took the safest route to go across the deck.
Vasemmalle.
I held onto the railings all the time so that I would not slide back and forth.
Kiinni koko aika, että mä lähdin liukumaan.
It was tough.
Edestakas ja liikkuminen oli vähän hankalaa siinä vaiheessa.
The first rescuer is now on deck, controlling the guide cable. It's time for Corporal Scott Elliston to start his descent.
You definitely feel vulnerable on the end of the cable, whether you're going to potentially get banged into something, or if the helicopter has a malfunction and has to set down on the ground or whatever, if it's going to end up going down.
Timing here is crucial. Getting it wrong could mean serious injury for Elliston or one of the sailors.
Okay, sir, raise your arm. When we get up there, I'll guide you in. Do not reach out at any time, okay? Here we go.
I had some notion that the crew must have been a little bit scared, since no one had ever been hoisted by a wire into a roaring helicopter. And I can understand it well, since I myself felt some horror looking at that thin wire. How could it possibly carry 2 men?
The cable is less than 5 millimeters in diameter and may look flimsy, but in fact it can lift more than 800 kilograms at a time. To maintain an equal distance between the ship and the helicopter, Thibault has to constantly increase and decrease power. And because the power is changing, adjustments are required to all the other controls. The helicopter is never stable.
Keep in mind that that boat is rocking like a chair, like 45 degrees each way, and it's moving up and down. So you're following that boat through all that motion. And then if you don't anticipate properly, the boat starts to rise up again, and now it's coming towards you, so you have to move the helicopter back up.
One by one, the crew members are lifted into the cormorant. There are now 6 sailors left on deck, but only enough fuel to hover for another 25 minutes.
That's it, keep it moving.
And Major Thibault is facing another challenge. To maintain the hovering position, the engines are working at 100% capacity. But now and then, strong crosswinds blow into the rotors, causing problems.
Enough to hold up here, boys. Let's go. Keep it moving.
The crosswinds create something called translational lift. When this happens, the engine doesn't have to work nearly as hard. This constant change causes massive vibration and puts enormous physical strain on both the helicopter and Thibault.
Well, it's very tiring, obviously. There's a lot of turbulence. We're moving a lot. It's a very demanding, not only mentally, but physically.
Cannot reach out any time, okay?
Scott Elliston prepares the 11th sailor for liftoff. 5 now remain to be saved. Thibault keeps a close eye on his fuel gauge. He's running out of daylight and fuel. Soon there'll be no choice but to leave the Camilla, regardless of whether or not there are any sailors left on the ship. Even for a veteran like Thibault, the pressure is enormous.
Saying that there's never any emotion would be probably lying. There's always emotion. Let's put it this way. If one of our family member was in there, it would probably be impossible to make a reasonable decision. So in many ways, I believe not knowing the people you're helping is probably what allows you to make the right decision, because it's always very difficult. You have to go step by step, very slowly and very safely.
Tietysti siinä on muita.
We had to be calm. We couldn't show that we were scared or in panic, because there's always that danger of fear being contagious. And now we had so little waiting time left that we needed to take it easy.
Save a seat for me, Mayu!
Kun tuli mun vuoro mennä siihen vaijerille ja
when it was my turn to go to the cable, I already knew what to do. I just tried to do what the guy told me. When we were going up, I remember wondering what's going on in this guy's head. We didn't really talk that much on the way up to the helicopter. But I wasn't scared at that time anymore, because it was obvious they knew what they were doing.
Jotenkin enää siinä vaiheessa, että kun homma näytti olevan niin hanskassa, niin
Rob, tell Scott we have 10 minutes of fuel left.
The helicopter has been hovering over the thrashing boat for more than an hour. The winds are increasing, the waves are getting bigger, and the daylight is beginning to fade.
Now you get the pressure on the radio. They're like, okay, where are you at? We got to get going. So then it starts getting even more pressure. Now you're rushing even more because now you're down to the wire where you have to get it done.
Kun mä olin siellä helikopterissa, niin siinä oli semmoinen pallon muoto.
When I was in the helicopter, I looked through this rounded window and I tried to look one last time.
Se vielä kirpasee, kun
and I did see it down there, floating.
Näkee sen siellä yksinään heilumassa, ihan pimeänä.
And it hurt to see it over there rocking alone.
Se oli jotenkin niin.
It felt like, how did we dare to leave it there alone in the dark sea with a storm coming?
Merelle ja myrsky on tulossa.
The rescued sailors don't realize that up in the cockpit, Thibault and Mercer are now trying to deal with a new danger.
This weight is killing us.
Rotor decay.
The additional weight of the sailors in the back, combined with the demand on the engine in hover mode, is causing decay or drooping on the rotors, which means they're slowing down.
Last thing you want to hear is rotor. When you hear the warning, rotor, 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 you know that the helicopter's run out of power.
And if you're losing power and the speed of the rotor drops, you know where you're going. You're not flying anymore.
this time when the dusk was upon us, the storm was coming upon us, you're getting the last couple guys in.
The slowing down of the rotors is critical. Thibault has very little time to decide whether to continue with the mission or abort. The fate of those remaining on the ship is now in his hands.
Have to ignore it.
Rotor. Thibault takes a chance and ignores the warning. Captain Rakula and the two rescuers are still on deck.
You notice the winds were picking up. It was getting worse. The winds were stronger. The boat was rolling more. So it definitely became more of a challenge as the mission went on.
Captain Rakula has watched his entire crew of 15 ascend to safety. Now, after more than an hour on the ship's icy bow, it's his turn.
It was, to say the least, a little bit difficult to run to the hoist guy. You had to always watch whether the deck was like this or if it was like this. And when the deck was level, you had to run and be careful not to start running when the deck was tilting. The deck had to be level, and then you would go. When I was a young boy, I naturally was hoping that, if and when I went to sea, that I would never have to abandon ship. But that's what happened. And of all things, on a helicopter. My last look at Camilla was when I sat in the doorway of the helicopter, just before going in to sit down. I thought, this is where you'll be left rocking. It is a pity that we had to leave. But there was no choice.
Thibault and his team complete the evacuation in 70 minutes. The Cormorant has just enough fuel to get to St. John's. As the helicopter picks up speed, the drooping rotors return to normal, but the storm is still closing in. The sailors settle in for what they hope will be an uneventful journey. With daylight fading, the flight home will be in total darkness and bitter cold.
Let's keep altitude at 200 feet. May as well avoid these headwinds. We might even save some gas. You know, it wasn't that long ago we wouldn't even be flying in these conditions.
As the storm closes in, temperatures drop, and Thibault and Mercer know there's a real danger of ice building up on the rotors, the last thing you want on a helicopter.
Helicopters are not designed to fly in ice. When I was flying Army-type helicopters, you avoided it like the plague. You hit a cloud of ice and you did a 180, you returned back.
But not anymore. The Cormorant is equipped with special de-icing equipment called a Rotor Ice Protection Unit, or RIPU for short. The RIPU system transfers heat into the rotors to prevent ice from building up. But there's a trade-off. De-icing draws a huge amount of power, and that power has to come from somewhere. With ice building rapidly on the rotors, the RIPU is sucking up power to get rid of it, and the Cormorant has to work at capacity to keep its heavy load aloft. Something has to give. The helicopter uses so much power that Mercer's control panel, with all the instruments he needs for navigation, dies.
Losing EIS screens. Prepare to take over. Yeah, standing by. Just give it a second.
So now we're flying at night, low level over the ocean, in freezing rain and snow, and then to lose your instruments is quite something.
I'm going to try switching my signal generators over to you. Here we go.
Thibault transfers the generators from his control panel over to Mercer's side of the helicopter.
Essentially, I was using now his instruments or his signal generator to provide input into my screens.
Oh, that's one way to get the adrenaline pumping, huh? It seems to be holding.
The Cormorant heads for St. John's, 477 kilometers away. The passengers have no idea what their pilots have been dealing with in the cockpit.
We never knew a thing about that. We couldn't even hear any sign that the helicopter might have had any kind of trouble. And I have the feeling that had we known, we would surely have thought, okay, we're going from the frying pan into the fire.
"13 hours since the Camilla's engine died, the Cormorant finally touches down in St. John's. It's been the longest day of Captain Rakola's life.
It felt wonderful when the helicopter finally landed at the airport and we were able to walk on dry land, so to speak, without getting our feet wet. It was a really fantastic feeling.
And for Major Thibault and 103 Search and Rescue Squadron, mission is accomplished. All 16 sailors have been saved.